What's going on, creators? Just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about really focusing on what you want versus habitually fixating on what you don't want, why that's important, how every thought that you're thinking, regardless of if it's good or bad, is creative. Thoughts of doubt, thoughts of guilt, shame, all of those thoughts that are in your consciousness, until you let them go, will continue to be planted into the field of awareness, reflecting back to you on the screen of space undesirable things. And so you can use the things that are undesirable as they manifest throughout the day, your present moment as it unfolds, now, realizing that every change you make shifts you into a parallel version of reality. Now, retroactively, even changing the past to align to this present moment, subtly at first, but more and more obvious as you become to embody the new direction that you're wanting to go, what you desire to experience. It's like, well, Mike, what if your desires are hedonistic, sinful desires? And it's like, part of this is really getting to the idea that you are dead to sin. That's not who you are. You were that, but who you are now is innocent. You're free. You are in the embodiment of who you were created to be in Christ. And so letting go of a lot of these concepts of like accusations. Oh, Mike, you're being so fucking selfish all the time, wanting to focus on what you want. And it's like, why do you think what you want is separate from what God wants, for one? Why do you think what you are doing is separate from that other person, for two? And really, you start to see how inverted the actual soul-sucking demonic realm is, in the sense that they'll sit there and accuse you of being selfish, even though that's exactly what they are. If you do not know the source of life force energy is within you, then you are squeezing yourself off from it. So the only way to experience it is to take it from others that are connected with the life force energy. Ultimately, we all have that connection, but under the spell, under the delusion of the old cursed mind, it's like the sun is always shining, but you have the ability to take the curtain that's letting the sun in through a window and shutting it, and then all of a sudden tell yourself stories about how you're separate from the sun, you're separate from all of this stuff, that you're no longer connected to that energy, that you did something so wrong. You must have killed God because it's gone. You're so full of guilt and shame and blah, 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 and all this stuff. That's what the demonic realm does. It's like, it's not actually even cut off from the source, but through that delusion, they're cutting themselves off. They're doing it to themselves, and simultaneously then trying to get a lot of these attributes of love, joy, peace, gratitude, blessing, abundance, prosperity, health, well-being. All those come from God. God is that. So it's like, if you are separating yourself from that, like, oh, God's out in space somewhere and not part of your consciousness that you can connect with, well, then you're always going to be looking to the outer to fulfill your needs. You're going to look to the outer to make you whole and complete. You're going to look to the outer to tell you what to do, to tell you what's right and wrong, instead of listening to the teacher within you that is not this judgmental, condemning thing. That's part of the illusion of the world, and that's part of the illusion of middlemen that are outside of you on this pedestal that subjugates you to them and what they think is right and wrong based on their own flawed understanding of what is right and what's wrong. So much of creation in itself is just neutral. It just depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from a perspective that God is outside of you in space, and that you're alone, and that you're somehow so inherently guilty of something that God separated God's self from you, that once you really understand unity and the law of like one, for example, you realize how retarded that line of thinking actually even is. It's retarded to think that you can think things that God doesn't want you to be thinking about, that you can do things that God don't want you to be doing. All of these things are just inherent errors in thought that come from the fundamental belief that you are separate when you're not. That's part of the old nature. It is not understanding God's law, and by not understanding the oneness of all things, when the Bible says love your neighbor as yourself, that's literal, like literally, like literally look at people as being you. the bigger self, not just the brain and the body self, not the brain and the body self that's separate from God and separate from creation and is just waiting to die. It's about connecting with the divine self, and that you get that revelation through this inner what am I trying to say? This inner connectivity, whatever, this connection you have with the Holy Spirit, which feels good. If you're thinking thoughts that feel bad all the time, you are listening to Satan, basically. You can break it down that simple. Fear, love. You're listening to limitations, separate, selfish bullshit, whatever. And it's like, Mike, if you focus on your desires all the time, you're the selfish one. It's like, okay, well, let's go on that circle jerk for a while of like, oh, I'm the selfish one, you're the selfish one. Oh, you're being selfish, I'm being selfish. It's like, even needing to like say that to another person is you being triggered. So that's actually you're being selfish, because for one, you're being triggered, you're upset because you don't have a handle on your emotions. You don't see me as a reflection of you. You see me as separate and something to attack. So it's like really getting to the bottom of like, what does it even mean to be selfish? Because there's ultimately only one big self going on. So, and creation is serving the self. Ultimately, God is demonstrating God's self, I am, through creation, through all of these different phases of creation. So I was in church today, and I just had this like kind of like a little download. I was thinking a lot about like desirable thoughts and imaginings, and it's like, how could this day get any better? Could it get any better? Or is it just like, and there's something I was just thinking about, and in that thinking, all of a sudden there's like a little revelation, a little download about like, everything is symbolic. Something I already kind of knew, but even relationship between a man and a woman and a baby is a symbolic metaphor for creating, through manifesting, through this divine correspondence. Where if you look at the male as being the selective mind, the imagining mind, and the female aspect of consciousness as being non-selective, you impress into the non-selective part of mind that doesn't care if you're doing curses or blessings. It's just like this field. So you have the male, which is selective, you have the female, which is non-selective. And when those two come together as one, there's a manifestation, aka a baby. You have the selective, non-selective being connecting in the energy of love. Another way to look at that is like, the heart, and you have the thought being the yellow aspect of this little diagram. You have this teal aspect as representing the field of awareness that watches and observes the thoughts, waiting to react to them and to create based on your faith. Well, if your faith is married to I have a thought, I believe it, I feel like this will happen, this expectancy, this faith, those two become one, and then there's a manifestation. Same thing with a wife or a husband and wife, baby, selective, non-selective, come together, manifestation. And you see this pattern playing out over and over again. The problem is you just don't believe it. It's like when you really believe it, there isn't the resistance, there isn't the wandering, there isn't the turmoil, there isn't the drama. It's in the doubt, and so much of our own doubt, gets demonstrated outside of us in the big mirror, the delayed mirror. Oh, things, uncertainty, reasons to be uncertain, comes back to you. It's really that simple. Once you really make a firm choice of like, what, I'm done fixating on what I don't want, and possibly manifesting that onto myself unconsciously. I'm going to consciously spend every moment of the day. What do I want to be thinking about? Why am I rejecting what is? Do I need to be thinking about anything? Can I just be in a flow state at the moment? All of these types of things. It's all this inner drama, and it's like there is no secondary thing that's like causing you to, it's just you doing it to you. And once you really grasp it, it's you doing it to you, it's your mind doing it to your mind, then it makes it easier to go, then what the fuck am I doing? Why am I just tormenting myself? If you have the choice between constantly spending a lifetime in pain or a lifetime in harmony, you're fucking dumb if you choose pain. It's that simple, and I hear it all the time from people that are like, try to get some noble thing out of their suffering. It's like, I think you're a fucking idiot. Suffer away endlessly then. Don't care. Just don't try to then suck the life force out of me because you're crying because you're suffering. It's like, you did it to you retard. Deal with it. You love it so much. You keep validating it. You keep wanting it. Then keep dealing with your fucked up manifestation. The problem is nobody likes suffering. Nobody likes it. It's designed in a way that gets you to stop doing these stupid things. It's like, maybe until you have mastered something that you can really see how perfectly you can manifest a harmonious situation. Playing an instrument, for example, how you do one thing is how you do everything, because there's only one thing going on. It's spirit manifesting into form. Oh no, Mike, there's all these separate. This is a wire cutter, and this is a fingernail clipper, and it's all one thing. It's all dream. Spirit manifesting into form. Things get created twice, first in mind, then in form. And once you really master something, you see how you can have an idea of how something harmoniously is supposed to sound, and how well you can demonstrate that is based on your own belief. It's like you hear these people that just want to just constantly just be in a shit show. And it's like, well, then they make the excuse, well, life kind of sucks sometimes. It's like, no, it doesn't. It's you doing it to you. Fucking wake up. I get so tired of people that just are constantly focusing on what they don't want. And this is me too. I get tired of doing it in my own self. It's like, at what point do I just stop fretting about this and just go full throttle, all in? I'm tired of living this way. Fear is not real. But then there's the doubt. There's like, well, it could be real. You could be, it's like, yeah, you're experiencing awesome levels of health right now. You could be in a fucking situation where you have a stroke and you're just all fucking strokey and your life is a living hell. It's like, oh, that was a nice fear thought. And it's like, do I want to? I could be imagining, the exact opposite of that. But instead, you get tricked. I get tricked. It's like, oh, I'm just going to think about how death and decay. Worst case scenario. Oh, maybe I'll have a heart attack. Maybe I'll have this. Maybe I'll have that. And it's like, why am I focusing my attention on that? Well, Mike, there's a divine dichotomy and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if I was in heaven right now, which is ultimately what living in the end is, if you take it to the furthest degree. And that's how I feel like getting to the bottom of truth is easier to unpack, is when you take a claim and you bring it all the way out to its furthest extent. It's like, okay, well, if you're going to, quote unquote, live in the end, well, Middle Earth here, where I'm living as a mortal being, is not living in the end. The end is I'm living as a fucking immortal spirit in heaven, right? Is that not the end that a lot of Christian people believe is real? It's like you die and then you get judged and then you go to all these levels of heaven where, what is that? It's like where you just feel good all the time. Oh no, Mike, because what people, aren't realizing and not taking things to the furthest extreme is like, okay, well, you're subtly living in a state of hell, not realizing you are, but you're justifying all this bullshit and drama because you think that you deserve it. You're on your fucking cross. You don't realize you're on the cross, and eventually you need to come off that motherfucking thing. Jesus did, and so are you. And it's just a matter of how long you're going to sit up there. How long you're going to crucify yourself with what you don't want. How long? It's only ever now. So it's like you're either living in hell in the present moment or you're not. Again, you're either in a state of fear or love. Ultimately, it's a gigantic circle, but there's two polarities in that, but ultimately there's only one. And it's in that realization of like, okay, either one of these will manifest, either what I don't want or what I want. You got to get to the point of like, this is so fucking dumb to sit here fixating on what I don't want. And then it only has to manifest a handful of times. Maybe. Maybe some people just want to keep doubling down an infinite amount of times. I don't, but like when it comes to whenever you're like, some bullshit and you catch, for example, like maybe you're thinking about some fucked up thing going on in your body. I've had this happen recently, where it's just like, oh, so maybe some pain or whatever. And next thing you know, 5 minutes later, there's pain. It's like, oh, it manifested that quick. I focused my attention on it. I could have been thinking about pleasure. Oh, this feels good. Oh, it's going to pop and feel like a relief and experience that. Or, I'm just going to have to deal with now this fucked up manifestation that hurts, that doesn't feel good. But I should just abase myself and suffer endlessly because of what reason? If the end goal is heaven, where that shit doesn't exist, and that is supposedly where God governs heaven, and there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no fear, and you're supposed to live in the end, you're supposed to bring that shit to the present moment. And if you're making up any fucking excuse why you're not, that's your problem. That's you doing it to you. No one's doing it. Well, Mike, I got all this religious programming that says I need to self-abase and enslave myself because some outer thing told me to. Again, big trick, big gigantic trick. If you didn't learn shit from COVID, big fucking glaring trick. Yeah, the alternate polarity of this realm will trick you and enslave you by that fucking thought right there. It will say, oh, well, you don't want to be selfish, so you need to do this is, you need to inject yourself with this shit. It's like, why wouldn't you? Are you selfish? Are you so fucking, people are dying. Didn't you know people are dying? You're so fucking selfish. Why wouldn't you? It's like, I already had COVID for one. I'm not, I'm immune to it according to what science of 5 years ago, but it's that fucking trick over and over again. Oh, if you are really a pure person and a good person, you let kids get their dicks cut off. What's wrong with you? It's that kind of like virtue signaling bullshit where it's like you become a slave to shit you don't want because you don't want to be selfish and rock the boat. Meanwhile, a predatory person is like, what a fucking idiot. Yeah, keep jumping through hoops, retard, and feed me your energy and doing exactly what I'm telling you to. Don't be selfish. Be my slave. But, people don't want to realize that there's predatory aspects of creation. There's non-predatory aspects of creation. Nothing. It's all like neutral. It depends on your own consciousness ultimately. And you reap exactly what you deserve. And a lot of that has to do with imagining the worst case, imagining fear, not standing in faith at all, not living in the end, which is like, okay, the end is heaven, so everything true in heaven should be true right now if God is real and within me and everything else. So it's like really renewing your mind into that is the challenge on some level. But, it's more about using that as contrast to go, wait a second. Why am I imagining hell for myself when I could be imagining heaven? God's going to reward either one, non-selectively. Again, get that through your fucking head so clear as day that you won't drift into this shit because non-selectively, it doesn't matter. You've already been doing this. Will continue perpetually to do this. Focus on love. What would God do? What would Jesus do? What would heaven be like right now? And use that as contrast with like, well, if I was in heaven right now, I wouldn't be in unbearable pain for weeks and weeks on end. That would be what hell would be like. Hell would be like that. Constantly dealing with people that are fucking retards, constantly dealing with soul-sucking people, constantly dealing with frustration and difficulty and dysfunction and disorder, constantly dealing with fear, guilt, shame, being punished, all these kinds of things that most people they don't even think any big deal about. Spending the present moment, fixating their consciousness on that, demonstrating that, experiencing that, being a negative source of for somebody else to look at it as like, that's like the worst case scenario is that person. That state of consciousness, when every state exists and it's a matter of free will for you to choose what you want. Really, it's getting to a space. It's like, what do you actually even believe? It's like I've gotten to a space, recently where it's just like, it's like I don't believe like medicine's real, and I don't believe the news, and I don't believe this, and I don't believe the body can do, and it's like all these limitations and bullshit, and it's like, well, what do I actually believe? Because I'm running out of I don't believe anything. It's like, I don't believe that God can do this. I don't believe man can do this. I don't believe I can do this. So it's like, what am I, just fucked? It's like, and realizing those things, then you can start to make a big switch in what you're thinking about and doing. And it's like, wait a second. What so much of what I'm fearing is death, ultimately manifesting in all these different ways, like health. Sometimes if you're like a sense of your identity is tied in with something, it's like losing that could feel like a death. So many ways fear of death can manifest into your life through ways that you don't even really see how it connects. But in doing that, then it's like, okay, well, what am I really afraid of? Am I afraid of like dying? It's like, no, not that. Am I afraid I'm just gonna be tormented for weeks and weeks on end before I finally slip away? Yeah, maybe. Am I afraid that some outer God is going to judge me and say I'm a piece of shit and I need to go to hell? Even though like look around, I mean a lot of that's already manifested if you wanted to experience that. Like most people have already been in hell. Most people are in hell right now. It's just like in fear, in worst case scenario, in separation, in enslavement, and all these kinds of shit. It's like they're already fucking living like shit. So what? You take a bad thing, make it worse. It's like people in prison. It's just like, what are you gonna do? Oh, we're just gonna put you in a cell by yourself. And it's like, for how long? Until you break? Until you fucking snap? The answer is always love. And so the answer that a lot of us need is like, you need to start loving your fucking self big time, because like if you're not doing it, nobody else going to. And if you keep searching for someone outside of you to love you, some outer being to love you, it's like, I've spent many nights praying and praying and praying. It's like, for love or whatever. And it's just like, until you grant it to yourself, you're just giving yourself fear instead. You have to open the door to it. You have to be like, you know what? If I'm not getting love from this person, these so-called friends, these people, these associates, these acquaintances, it's like, I ain't getting it from that. Ain't getting it from nothing. So I ain't getting love from my body. I ain't getting love from, my, all these manifestations. Like, until you give it to yourself and allow yourself to just embody that right now, fuck it. Who cares what and so much of it is like feeling shy even. It's just like, because you get so used to like imagining fear and shit. When you actually get to space, and I just experienced this the other day. I was like riding my bike home from a job. It was actually 2 days in a row where like the majority of the day is like, I have no fucking problem at all, really. It's like, it's spring where I live, so it's like the weather's nice. You got all these things blooming, all these flowers, and everything smells really nice. Everything's vibrant and awesome. You go from winter, which is like kind of like death and decay and just cold and intense, to just like ideal, heavenly, what do you call it? The like Edenic, almost feeling, where it's just like everything's blooming and so awesome, and it's like, man, I don't have any problems. My body was feeling awesome. I was feeling really strong. I was like, the day went really harmonious. And it's like, man, this is awesome. Not even having any type of low grade anxiety of like, what if I fall off my bike, or what if this happens, or what if that, what all this bullshit that, there's one thing where it's like that obvious like fear, but then it's like that subtle just unease. It's like you just can't even, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop sometimes. It's like I had none of that, and it was just like, it felt weird. It's like it felt weird not having some sort of stress and some sort of unease. Like it felt like I should feel like guilty, like maybe I'm gonna have a fucking stroke or something fucked up's gonna happen because I feel too good. And a lot of that thinking comes from getting sucked by pendulums and sucked by the demonic, that kind of belief that, things are going to feel too good. And again, that's a balancing force where you're resonant, think in terms of energy, where you're really vibing in the energy of love and joy, and it's a really high vibe. Well, if you can't steward that in consciousness, if you're vibing up here and you're not able to regulate that to like maybe decompress a little bit, something will just, maybe down here will just come and level you out. Just impersonally, like electricity will discharge. Get a lot of the personal things out of your consciousness. It's like impersonal love, impersonal manifesting, impersonal impressing the subconscious mind. It's like, get this idea of judgment out of your fucking head, because it's you that's judging. It's, everything else is just happening. It's life is neutral in the way that like you are the one assigning meaning to it based on your identity, all these different things, all these different factors. And it's just a matter of like changing your mind about it in a lot of different ways. Not every time, sometimes you can smack yourself with a hammer and it's like, yeah, okay, well, this is happening and it sucks and whatever. But there's a difference between like acute things and chronic things. You can really start to looking at a lot of your thinking and really get a lot of this bullshit out of your consciousness, so that you can, these subtle things that happen, start to micro tune your consciousness, but like getting into like flow states is really awesome. Getting into stuff that you're really good at and it's taken time and discipline to manifest it. Once you realize that that's possible for you, like if you are able to master the guitar and you can play it, your inner vision demonstrating it perfectly. There's not chaos. Everything's playing just boom, 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 fucking awesome. Then you can realize, hey, everything in my life can be like this. Because, you start to live in the end, which the end is not Middle Earth. The end is heaven. So bring heaven to the present moment for focusing on what you'd want, and if it wasn't true of God, if it wasn't true of Jesus, then it's not true of you. So it's like any of these limiting thoughts, these limiting beliefs, it's like, no, you deserve to get sick and die. You deserve to be in pain. You deserve like to be enslaved to some satanic thing. All these beliefs, these soul-sucking beliefs. It's like, that's not true. That's not true. It's in your own acceptance that makes it true. You can accept anything that you want or don't want. You have that much freedom, but you don't really have the freedom of the how. It's like once you use your free will, you've been given a gift in the sense that you can manifest what you want. You have so much freedom you can manifest what you want and what you don't want. You can have to do anything. Either end of the spectrum. It's you choosing. And then, how it manifests, that's part of like the divine, how, But, I think I'm going to balance. I just wanted to bring that to you guys' and girls' attention just to start implementing it more and more in your daily practice so that you become stronger, so that you're able to really spend more time and flow throughout the time that you are, doing your daily things in the present moment. And start to really plant more conscious seeds of like, okay, well, there's a shit show. I don't deserve to be treated like this. I don't deserve this kind of shit. Using the concept of heaven to start to bring that into your present moment so you stop having the like, well, I don't really understand what God's plans are. So, it's okay that, there's like, I got stabbed to death almost. It's like, would you be stabbed to death if you were in heaven? Would that be okay? Or are you just using your experience of the hell world that we were brought up in to justify it? Oh, yeah, crazy people do crazy things. It's like, yeah, but if you were in heaven, would that be acceptable? So start using heaven as like the mile marker in the present moment to be like, hey, this is not okay. This is not cool. This is not what I want to experience. Is not desirable, and when you realize that God made everything out of God's self and becomes all things, it's a lot easier not to be tricked into dealing with dysfunction and fucking bullshit. Even though God created the dysfunction on some level as a possibility, doesn't mean you need to do that. It's like a buffet. It's like, just because there's asparagus on the buffet doesn't mean you have to eat it. You can choose. You don't have to sit there and judge it either. You don't have to be like, fuck that asparagus. Fuck everybody that tastes from it. I hate it. I hope it kills everybody that. And it was just like getting really dark about it. But like, you don't have to have all this attachment to it and all these stories about it. You're just like, it's just asparagus. I want lobster. And it's like that. And it's that easy. It's not hard. It's simple. It's so simple that it's confusing. For some reason, but like when you take out the confusion, it's like simple. What I want to do today, I want to experience more levels of love today, more harmony, more this, more that. Oh, why? Because that will make you quote unquote happy. It's like, because I want to, because the inner guide within me wants that. It's like, get out of this idea that what you want is separate from what God wants for you. You wouldn't be desiring it unless your larger self wants you to experience it because you're lacking it. Look at all of these desires as like appetite. It's like you wouldn't be so hungry if you haven't fucking been starving for 2 days. It's like the things that you want you back because you're depriving yourself from what your inheritance is in Christ. Oh, that's a bold claim. It's like, yeah, I don't really even care to like convince anybody. It's like, live in hell then. I don't care. enjoy it. Enjoy your suffering, and, hate on me. It's like, well, how dare you? You're the bad man, Mike. It's like, good, hate on me. Feed me your energy. I don't fucking care. Thank you. I appreciate it. But, until the next now, I think we're balanced. So appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. Probably not the best transition, but, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all that kind of fun stuff. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Donation link in the description. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Until the next now, God bless.